Get this done by working together as a team.
Jeez, bub. Keep buzzing in my ear.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the Marvel fan site that I have plot synopsis and character bios for this issue. So, we're going to be looking at Marvel Fanfare number 33. Now, for those of you that are following my X-Men stories, you know that we are about to enter the Mutant Massacre saga. However, I saw this little gem, and this little gem actually takes place right after X-Men 200. So I sort of missed it. I actually have this issue, but I don't think I have read it since I bought it when it first came out. It's really weird. So this was part of a gaming system in the early to mid 80s called Quest Probe. And each game was released with a Marvel comic. So the first game featured the Hulk, the second game featured Spider-Man, and then another game featured the Human Torch, I believe. The fourth game was supposed to feature the X-Men. So this was an inventory story that was written for that, but it never saw print. So Marvel decided, hey, let's just put it in Marvel Fanfare and get it out. It's actually beautifully drawn. It's by June Brigman. And although the cover, and Terry Austin. Yeah, I thought it was Bob Wycheck for some reason in the cover. But it is Terry Austin. So it is nice to see Terry Austin's beautiful, clean rendition. So, all right, here we go. Now, this issue will be in the playlist, and it'll be nestled right after X-Men 200. So it really doesn't make much to do with anything else. So it's sort of a self-contained story here. But after the trial of Magneto, and yes, I say Magneto, the X-Men are in his headquarters in the Bermuda Triangle. You see Colossus and Kitty Pryde. You see Wolverine here. Here's Magneto, and then of course this is Lee Forrester, whom he had a relationship at that time. And of course we have our credits here: Chris Claremont, June Brigman, and Terry Austin. Terry Austin, of course, was the inker during John Byrne's magnificent run. So and here is this Quest Probe editor, Bob Budiansky? I don't know. So in all this exposition, Chris Claremont is letting us know that Magneto has become a villain. There were enemies, now they're allies. So all that good stuff here. And as I mentioned, if Chris Claremont can say it with 100 words, something he could say with 5, he'll choose 100 words. So I love Chris Claremont. Everybody knows X-Men is some of the things that I love, but Chris Claremont is super wordy, which makes reading through the videos really long. So I try to narrate as much as possible. Now you're gonna see here that normally I give you a digital version. However, this is actually a scan of the book. Marvel Fanfare was done with a little bit higher production value. So Magneto here asks Colossus if he can help him carry a crate, and Colossus says that it's fine. Lee tells him that he's missed him and that he also missed her here. And Lee Forrester is a normal human. and Magneto has sort of given way back to the light side for all the long that it'll last. But at least during this time, that was what Chris Claremont wanted. He has taken over the school from Professor Xavier and is going to try to continue with Xavier's dream. All right. That previous page that I skipped was just a scan of the second part. So, all right. So Kitty here is staring, and Wolverine just says it's not provide is says it's rude to stare, and she's like, they wouldn't notice me, and set off a cannon, and you can see Magneto and Lee are like practically making out. We just didn't really see that during that time. And so she's like, how can the enemy now be the, the leader of the X-Men and all that? And so Wolverine's just relaxing here. And so he was trying to sneak up on Wolverine, but Wolverine, of course, is able to see her. And then he's like, let's see here. He tells her next time, try try harder. And so, let's see here. She's looking at the island and says, this place gives me the creeps here. Wolverine agrees, and she goes, I thought nothing fazed you. And he says, only a fool is never scared. And he says here, hanging around those rocks like being on night patrol. You always on the edge expecting an attack. You can't see him, but you know the enemy's watching, waiting for you to drop your guard. And of course, he pops his claws, and Claremont tells him that adamantium and how they're laced and all that kind of stuff. And Storm is behind her, and she startles Kitty. And she says the same thing. I don't trust the place, and she'll be glad to get back to the mansion. Of course, I have covered when the X-Men first went there. I believe it was X-Men. Um, is it 151 or 149? It's one of those two. Anyway, but then Magneto took it over, and she's like, Magneto should have left it alone. So, and so they said that the statues, they've been examining them, and they're not made out of stone. It's some form of crystalline circuitry. So Kitty goes by. Oh my goodness gracious! It's really nice in silhouette, but he is really. I don't just didn't see this throughout the comic books. This relationship. It looks almost like Claremont just abandoned it and moved forward. So they go back again. Can we trust Magneto and all that kind of stuff? And Storm's not sure, but suddenly the statues come alive, and they begin to attack here. So, and you see that it catches Storm, and so Wolverine starts to chop off, but suddenly, Storm is turned into that statue. Magneto uses his powers here and realizes they do not let him touch him, and they need to deal with them from a distance so that they don't turn into stone like Storm here. So Wolverine said that's easier said than done because they're popping up everywhere. And Kitty says that her phasing power is disrupting the electronics, so she tries to walk through, and they weren't affected, but she was, and turns into the statue. And Kitty falls in there, and Colossus needs to get her out so she doesn't drown, and then says, Wolverine behind you, and hits him, and he turns also into it. And now it's Colossus against these guys here, and he punches them, but of course that turns him into stone. So the only one that's left now is Magneto here. So the reason I say Magneto and not Magneto is because it's magnet. The word is magnet, not magnet. And if it was Magneto, it would be spelled with two E's, Magni and EE, and it's Magnet O. So I don't care what Stan Lee says. I don't care what anybody else says. I say Magneto, deal with it. So all right. So Magneto dispatches the last creature, but he finds that he is the only one left standing. He figures he must draw the enemy's fire and protect the X-Men. Sarcastically, he thinks that it's concerning, that it's becoming instinctive to think of others before him. And now he's going to try to draw Lee away, but realizes that she too has been petrified. And then sees this guy here as the voice. He says, um, let's see, that she's unharmed, and so is everybody, and that this is just a stasis. And Magneto wonders who the heck is he. So, so he introduces himself, and he is the chief examiner. Magneto demands to know what is the meaning of this, and the chief examiner replies that this is an evaluation of Magneto and his companion. So, um, and he's completed that, and says Magneto is the survivor and easily the most powerful in the group. He requires him to pass through his scanning plate, and then Magneto wants to know what if he refuses, and then that is not an option. So, all right, so we go through this, and now we see here that Rogue is on the boat. We saw her on the cover, but we had not seen her yet. So there she is, and sees this display here, and suddenly you see Magneto has fallen in the water. He's also been petrified here, so she catches him and puts him in the boat here, and gets on land, but he sees that it's in there, and it looks like the chief examiner, or that dude here has entered or created Magneto's body or something. You can see he's free of miracles at last. I am free. And so he senses that she's probably gonna be a threat to him. So you can see he grabs some stuff and imprisons her, and then he puts on the garb here. And it looks like he is looking to enslave the Earth. And he says paltry ore, but she lets us know. Um, and so he's using his powers and casting her away. And so she's going to try and spin around to see if she can free herself from that imprisonment. And she does, but now she's going to go through that portal here, but it looks like it hit, and now she's stuck here. And it says here that she screams and feels pain, and suddenly she falls, and now she's green. So it looks like it. Remember that I told you it was a game with Hulk and Spider-Man and Human Torch. That's gonna play a key to this. This was supposed to be the fourth game. So now she's green like the Hulk, and now she's sticking in walls. You see that he's still trying to. Now she's sticking on wall, and even has a spider sense here. And now she's like the Human Torch. So it is incorporating all the other stuff from the previous games. So she's so here she's says, I gotta use my brain. This all started when I hit that black slab. So that's the reason the powers were stored inside, but by whom and why? Is it here to grab the X-Men? Did something go wrong when it came to Magneto's turn? So she says here, too many questions though, too many unknowns. what I wouldn't give for some answers. So then Chris Claremont is going to give us sort of some stuff here, information here. Um, so there's a citadel in a remote highland, this tower, and there's a laboratory, and in that laboratory is a computer, and there are two mysterious artifacts here: a matter energy egg and a biogem. And so that's those are the things that you see there. So the Citadel is deserted, has been for some times, and it teems with life uh, and passion, both light and dark. And then there's chaos and logic pathways, all that kind of stuff. So um, suddenly Magneto's consciousness kind of appears here. So it's kind of like an astral projection, and sees someone there and introduces himself. And this guy says, "I am Durgan." And so he says, "Have you the slightest conception of what you have done?" So then we go back to the story, and you see Rogue using the Human Torch fire, fighting that fake Magneto here, but she cannot match his strength here. And so we're going to get basically what is happening here. Again, this story is not really, I'm completing it for completion's sake because I am covering all things Chris Claremont for the X-Men and the Chris Claremont era as well. So that's why I'm covering this. So this story may not be a cup of tea for everyone. So if it isn't, I totally understand that. But and speaking of stuff, I do have several playlists. Feel free to check them out. I'm covering X Factor. I'm covering the Uncanny X-Men. I'm covering the New Mutants. I've covered the Wolverine limited series. I've covered the other Marvel fanfares that Chris Claremont wrote. I've covered lots of stuff. So there's also a X Universe playlist that has everything in there, and it's all done in reading order. So check that out if you would so like. And so we're gonna get to the gist of the origin here. So Dugan explains, or Durgan, sorry, I said Dugan. Durgan explains that the Chief Examiner is his construct. Magneto remarks that it attacked him and his companions without provocation and demands an explanation, so Durgan's going to give him a story. It is the imminent destruction of his world and the whole slaughter of his race. He asks if that is sufficient provocation. The dreaded Black Fleet draws ever nearer, ravaging every civilization in its path. Ages ago, his race forebears denounced the use of force to the extent that even conceiving of using it is an anathema to them. Their ethical code further prescribes from them employing others to fight for them. And so, which of course. Anyway, in council, Durgan argued that the exceptional times require exceptional measures, but his words were unheeded. He was determined to act on his own. His computer was programmed to seek the most powerful beings, such as Spider-Man, whose abilities would be evaluated by the Chief Examiner and replicated by his portal. From those templates, he would then create the ideal champion for his people, who would end the Black Fleet's depredations and restore peace to their galaxy. So Magneto asks if this is just a facsimile, and Durgan says yes, but he doesn't know why it's malfunctioning. Magneto explains that he is master of magnetism. All electronics are vulnerable to his powers. Obviously, he disrupted the circuit tree and created a scramble feedback loop that trapped both of their consciousness in its mnemonic system. But then he wonders what happened to the his body, and then he recalls that he sensed another consciousness replacing his, which of course would be the construct. So, all right, and so here are those that egg and that sphere here. Um, the bio gem, the bio gem and the energy egg. What a name! No wonder that company went bankrupt here. So, all right, and then we see the human rogue, still trying to fight the thing. One of the things about the story is that there's hardly any X-Men on it. It's really a Magneto rogue story. You don't really see much Wolverine. We kind of dispatch the X-Men's almost right away here. So as it chases Rogue, it gloats that it has gradually increased its influence over the computer programming to seek out Magneto's power. And Rogue thinks that the computer needs updating because the guy thinks that Magneto is evil, and of course Magneto has done a face turn. So this is what I mean. You see a lot of talky talk. So Magneto tells him this is the primal disruption. They need to bridge the chasm here, and it'll require all his strength. So, and he suspects that the innate awareness of his creation will prove integral to the restoration of its proper function. And then Durgan says, if we fail, Magneto, what becomes of my mission, my people? And Magneto says, it is because of your blind dedication to this mission that the X-Men are in danger. And now you see Hulk Rogue here. So it's cool that they're using some of the other stuff for that game here, and you can see her do this. So she's just trying to get him defeated here. Or just, she doesn't know that Magneto is still around, so she's just trying to defeat him, but she's actually giving our heroes some time here. And so he says, I will go alone then if I must. The X-Men are my friends. I like the pause. I will not betray that newly won trust by abandoning them. And again, this takes place after X-Men 200 here. And Durgan says, I'm ashamed. I have thought only of myself, of my needs and desires, uncaring of the effect they would have on others. I will help you, Magneto, whatever the risk. And so, he says, we must first cast off these cosmetic replications of our human forms and revert to the pure energy states that are our natural selves in the cybernetic cosmos, and then project our merge essences across the void. Man, oh man, Claremont. So they do just that here. And meanwhile, this guy's like, wow, I am alive and unharmed. And of course, here comes Rogue behind him and hits him. And then whatever Magneto does, it works, and they say they've done it. Proper order is being restored throughout my network. He's using his powers as I had to kind of explain in there. And he says he's regaining control of the chief examiner. Whatever force opposed us is now gone. I can scan no trace of it anywhere. And Magneto says, be careful, Durgan, be certain. And Durgan says, I shall, but before I do anything further, let me send you home. All right. And so Rogue here says, I have you yourself, babe, or do I have to bop you again? And Magneto says, I am Rogue, and I advise you not to try. And so you can see here now that she has to go through this thing again, and does, and now she's back to normal. And he says here, Magneto, your own abilities are still needed. The analyzer has been recalibrated to prevent any further malfunction. Please, though I will understand if you refuse. He complies and goes through himself. So we are now at the last 3 pages, but of course Chris Claremont is gonna use up every single panel that he possibly can. Man, you would think that they write him per word because he uses a lot of them. I love Chris Claremont. It's just he's so wordy, and because I like reading these comic books, I just have to try and do my best, sort of explaining stuff sometimes. But I don't always know if I do it well. But like I said, I do this for fun, so who cares, right? All right. And so you can see Magneto here saying that what happened today was an accident. His system may not be as foolproof as he thinks. Finally, all this could have been avoided had he approached them peacefully and asked for help. Durgan admits that he was afraid that Magneto would refuse. Magneto challenges him that if he takes things by force, how is he different from the Black Fleet? Durgan then admits that he has given him a lot to think about. And then elsewhere, the gem thinks that it chose Magneto because it thought he would have a natural affinity for its plan. It misjudged. In the future, it must be more circumspect until Durgan grows complacent, believing the danger is past. Then he will strike. So then the X-Men return back to normal here, and Colossus immediately cries out for Kitty, who fell into the pool, but Kitty appears and she's okay, and she says rocks don't need to breathe, and Wolverine wakes up in the boat and heads back, and here he says, better hot tail it back to the island and hope it ain't too late to help my buddies, cause if I am, someone is gonna pay. Alright, so we're almost done. So Wolverine comes with his claws pop, but Magneto says that everything is under control. And then Magneto's like, who's the dude with the fishbowl on his head? And he says, a misguided soul, Wolverine, one who has learned an important lesson here this day. Thanks to you, Magneto, and your X-Men. Although really it wasn't an X-Men story, as I mentioned. So he says, I owe you a great deal. Goodbye. And then they disappeared and leaves this mess. And Magneto says, or Rogue says that the dude's crazy. And Magneto says, by certain standards of his people, certainly a dangerous sociopath. Consider, though, child, as he has the capacity for violence really done, consider, though, child, has the capacity for violence really done humanity that much good? And so he's Chris Claremont gets a little preachy. But then he says, Durgan's race embodies the noble ideals, yet Durgan, in his zeal to save them, may in the process cost them what he holds dear. I wish him luck, but I wonder if his people will thank him for what he has done on their behalf and may yet do. Will his victory be worth the price? So, all right. Yeah, very interesting story. As I mentioned, this was for not really part of the, it was meant to be released with the game, but it was never released. So here it is. Marvel Fanfare 33, Chris Claremont, June Brigman, and Terry Austin. Like and subscribe. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, at least for completion's sake, a lot of people may not even be aware of this story. So, thanks for watching. Goodbye.